The cry in the void, the galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars, countless worlds, and countless voices. But in the cold emptiness between those stars, there was also silence. A silence that terrified the desperate, for silence meant no help was coming. The Zyran people had once been proud. Their cities floated above oceans, their towers touched the clouds, and their fleets moved like storms across the trade lanes, but now all of that was falling apart. Their suns burned too hot, storms ripped across their worlds, and famine followed war. Entire colonies were collapsing. Entire families were dying in the dark. The leaders of the Zyran High Council gathered in their shining hall. Once it had been a place of victory celebrations. Now it echoed with fear. Faces that once looked proud were pale, desperate, and weak. They knew their empire could not last another year. The council speaker raised his trembling voice. There is no one left to turn to. We have sent envoys. We have begged the other empires, and they all refuse us. The elders around the table lowered their heads. The rival species of the galaxy had watched the Zyrans fall and had done nothing. Some even celebrated. No one wanted to waste resources on a dying people. No one wanted to risk their fleets or their money. The galaxy was cruel and mercy was rare. The speaker's voice broke. If no one will help us, then we must do something unthinkable. We must send the signal. We must beg the stars themselves and hope that something, anything, will answer. A silence heavier than stone filled the chamber. No one wanted to speak the words, but all of them knew it was true. There was no other choice. Their scientists were ordered to prepare the transmission, a single signal that would travel across the stars. It would carry their voice, their plea, their shame, and maybe, if the universe had pity, someone would hear it. The broadcast began. It was not a message of strength, not a message of power. It was a voice filled with pain. To any who can hear us, we are dying, our worlds are breaking, our people cannot survive. We beg you, whoever you are, whatever you are, please help us, please save us. The cry was repeated again and again. It pulsed through the blackness of space. Across empty star systems, through nebulae, around dead suns, the voice of a broken people carried on every wavelength the galaxy used. At first, the Zyrans hoped for an answer. They waited, a day passed. Then a week, then a month, but nothing came. The galaxy remained silent. The weaker members of the council wept. Others raged in shame. Had they truly lowered themselves so far? Had they become so pitiful that not even scavengers would approach them? The signal kept going, spreading farther and farther, and still no reply. But out in the darkness, beyond the great empires and their powerful fleets, the message continued. It traveled to the edges of mapped space. It reached places most civilizations ignored, and then, one day, it touched a small blue world that many in the galaxy had forgotten. A world called Earth. On that day, human scientists at a listening station deep in the mountains caught something strange. The team had been expecting only background static, maybe distant pulsars or the hum of the cosmos. Instead, their computers lit up with patterns, repeating phrases, words filled with fear. The transmission was weak, broken by distance, but it was there. One scientist froze, listening as the alien voice begged. Her eyes widened as she whispered, "My God." "They're asking for help." The station reported it to their command. Within hours, generals, politicians, and even ordinary people were talking about it. The message spread across the networks. Aliens, real aliens, were begging humanity for salvation. Many thought it was a trick. Some said it was a trap. But when the recordings played, when the galaxy's pain echoed through human ears, silence filled every room. No one could deny the desperation in that voice. On the other side of the stars, the Zyrans continued to wait. Their skies grew darker, their people weaker, their hopes smaller. In their council chambers, leaders whispered, "No one will come, no one cares, the stars are empty." But far away, unseen by them on that small blue world, debates were rising, fleets were stirring, and humanity was listening. The cry in the void had not been ignored for the first time. The universe would learn a dangerous truth when humanity hears a cry for help. They do not look away, they answer, and that answer was already coming. Earth hears the plea. The mountains of Earth were quiet, the night air thin and cold. But inside the hidden listening station, everything was alive with alarm. Screens glowed, voices overlapped, and the trembling sound of the alien message repeated again and again. "To any who can hear us, please, we are dying, we beg you, whoever you are, Please help us. At first, the scientists thought it was a mistake, a fragment of static shaped by chance. But the words were too clear, too heavy with grief. And then the pattern repeated. Not once, not twice, but 100 times. There was no doubt this was real. The signal spread across Earth within hours. Military officers gathered in underground command bunkers. Politicians sat in emergency meetings. Broadcast networks played the voice again and again. Every citizen of Earth heard the sound of an alien begging for life. Reactions were mixed. Some were afraid, whispering that it was a trap, that the aliens only wanted to trick humanity. Others laughed, believing it was a joke, a clever hoax. But there were also those whose hearts burned with something else. They heard pain, not lies. They heard fear, not deception. And they knew the cry was real. In the United Earth Assembly, the debate was fierce. Generals warned against involvement. If we answer this plea, we may bring war upon ourselves. The great empires of the galaxy could destroy us, one said, his voice sharp like a blade. A diplomat shook her head. Perhaps. But can we ignore it? Can we sit in silence while an entire species dies? The chamber fell silent. Every leader felt the weight of the choice before them. Meanwhile, ordinary humans had already made their decision. In homes and schools, in factories and farms, people demanded action. Millions signed petitions. Millions marched in the streets on every screen. A single question was asked. If not us, then who? Behind locked doors in the shadows of Earth's secret facilities, another truth was revealed. Humanity had not been as weak or as unprepared as the galaxy believed. For years, projects had been hidden from the public eye. Fleets had been built, experimental engines tested, weapons forged not for conquest but for defense. Earth had always known the stars were not empty, and now those secret ships were ready to rise. In a secure hangar, engineers stood before a massive vessel, its hull black as night, its engines glowing faintly like caged stars. This was not a simple exploration craft. This was a fortress of steel, a weapon of mercy. It was built to cross the void quickly, to carry supplies, to defend the helpless. It was built for this very moment. The commander of the fleet, Admiral Marcus Hale, looked at the alien message again. He was a man of iron, scarred by old wars, but his eyes were heavy with something softer now. He remembered the words, the begging tone, the plea of a people who thought they had been abandoned, and in a voice that carried across the command deck, he said only one thing: prepare the fleet. Earth will answer. In secret, dozens of ships powered up. Engines roared, systems hummed, and weapons came online, yet at the same time, cargo bays were loaded with food, medicine, and machines of healing. Humanity was not going to the stars only with fire. They were going with hope, but not everyone on Earth supported this path. From the shadows there were whispers of sabotage. Certain powers wanted Earth to remain hidden, silent, safe. Some argued that revealing themselves to the galaxy would bring destruction. Unknown enemies might descend upon Earth. Unknown empires might see them as a threat, and so, within the same halls where humanity prepared to rise, spies worked to stop the launch. The night before departure, an explosion rocked one of the secret facilities. Flames rose, alarms screamed, and for a moment, it seemed the fleet would never leave. But humanity had learned to survive through fire and chaos. Workers rebuilt through the night. Engineers worked with bleeding hands. And by dawn, the ship stood ready once more. The people of Earth did not see these ships with their own eyes. They did not know the scale of the fleet, but they knew something was coming. They knew that humanity would not sit idle. And across the planet, prayers rose not for themselves, but for strangers, for a people far away who thought they had been abandoned. The alien signal continued to echo, reaching Earth again and again. On one end, despair; on the other end, determination. Soon the message would be answered, and the galaxy would learn a truth it had long ignored. Humanity was not like the other empires. Humanity did not turn away from cries of pain. When others refused, humanity stepped forward. In the command deck of the flagship, Admiral Hale looked out at the stars. The order was given, engines ignited, and the blackness of space was filled with human fire. The fleet rose, silent but unstoppable, toward the desperate voice in the void, toward a destiny that would shake the galaxy. For the first time, humanity was not waiting. Humanity was coming. The arrival of the unexpected. The Zerans had stopped waiting. Months had passed since the desperate plea was sent into the void. Their skies grew darker, their harvests smaller, their ships weaker, Every day, more families vanished into the silence of death. The people whispered in sorrow, "No one is coming. The stars have abandoned us." The High Council no longer met with hope. They met only to plan how to manage the end. One elder said bitterly, "Perhaps this is justice. Perhaps we are meant to fade, forgotten." The chamber was quiet. No one argued, for all of them believed it. Then one night something changed. The skies above the capital burned with fire, not fire from their dying sun, but streaks of light tearing through the heavens. At first, they thought it was the arrival of raiders, or perhaps scavengers coming to loot the bones of their empire. Alarms rang across the cities. Children were rushed into bunkers. Soldiers ran to their posts. Fear spread like wildfire. The last thing the Zyrans expected was mercy. Dozens of massive shapes broke through the clouds. Dark, sharp-edged ships hovered above the broken skyline. Their hulls were unlike anything the Zyrans had ever seen. They were not the designs of the old empires. They were not scavenger craft. They were strangers. The people waited for the bombardment. They braced for death, but instead of destruction, the strange ships did something unthinkable. They landed. The largest vessel descended like a mountain of steel. Dust and debris swirled as its engines roared. From its belly opened massive gates, and outrolled machines not of war but of healing. Medical stations unfolded like wings. Supplies were carried out in containers, and men and women in strange armored suits stepped onto Ziran soil. They removed their helmets, revealing unfamiliar faces, human faces. Their eyes were sharp, their expressions steady. The crowd gasped. These were not the cruel conquerors of legend. These were not scavengers come to feast. They looked ordinary. But behind their ordinary faces was something the galaxy had long forgotten. Resolve. The leader of the human contingent stepped forward. His voice carried through translators. "We heard your call. We came as fast as we could." For a moment silence hung heavy. Then an old Zyran elder stepped forward, his hands shaking. You are not from the empires, are you?" The human commander shook his head. "No, we are from Earth, and we will not let you die." The words struck the crowd like thunder. For the first time in years, their cries were answered. For the first time in years, hope returned, but hope was fragile. Not everyone believed. Some Zyran soldiers raised their weapons, suspicious and afraid. "Why would you risk yourselves for us? Why would you help strangers?" The humans did not flinch. One medic simply answered, "Because it was the right thing to do." The people had no answer for such words. No empire had ever spoken to them this way. Empires took, empires crushed, empires ignored. But these humans had crossed the stars not to conquer, but to protect. And then, before the Zyrans could begin to understand, the sky trembled again. This time, it was not human ships descending. It was warships, sleek, sharp, marked with the insignia of their oldest enemies. The rival empire had come to finish what starvation and storms had begun. Dozens of cruisers appeared, their weapons glowing like suns. The Zyrans screamed, "Even now, we are doomed. Even now they come to destroy us." The humans looked up at the threat. They did not retreat, they did not tremble. The human commander raised his hand, and a single word carried across the comms: "Shields." In an instant, the black ships of Earth lit up with power. Energy fields flared, weapons extended, and formations shifted into deadly patterns. The alien enemy thought they had come to feast on weakness. Instead, they had walked into the teeth of something they could not comprehend. For the first time, the Zyrans saw the truth. The humans were not just healers, not just saviors, they were warriors, and their fire burned brighter than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human fleet moved with terrifying precision. Missiles roared, cannons thundered, and enemy ships that had stood unchallenged for centuries began to fall in flames. The Zyrans watched in awe as their skies lit with war. The humans fought not for conquest, but for defense. They fought for strangers, for a people who had nothing left, and they fought with a fury that shook the heavens. The rival empire retreated in chaos, their once mighty fleet shattered. The humans did not pursue, they stood their ground, protecting the broken world below. And when the smoke cleared, the Zyrans realized something unbelievable. For the first time in living memory, they were safe. The elder who had spoken earlier dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He whispered words that spread across the crowd like fire. "They came for us. They truly came." And high above, the human flagship hovered in silence, its black hull reflecting the light of a dying sun. The galaxy had ignored the Zyrans' cry, but Earth had answered, And that answer had changed everything. The turning of fate. The skies of Zyran Prime still glowed with the ashes of battle. Wreckage of enemy ships burned as they fell through the atmosphere. The people looked up, expecting destruction. But instead they saw guardians. Ships of Earth standing silent. Forming a shield above their dying world, hope had returned, but hope was fragile. The Zyrans whispered to each other, "Why would these humans fight for us? Why would they risk their lives for strangers?" The answer was unclear, but the evidence was undeniable. The humans had come when no one else dared. Yet victory was not secure far beyond the system. Enemy fleets were already regrouping. The rival empire would not allow such humiliation to stand. They would return, stronger and angrier, and now, rumors spread that other empires had noticed the arrival of Earth's fleet. Some were curious, others fearful, and some already plotting. The galaxy's balance was beginning to shift, and everyone could feel it inside the human flagship. Admiral Marcus Hale stood over a glowing tactical map. It showed the Zyran system and the incoming signatures of enemy reinforcements. His officers waited for his decision. They knew the enemy would return in greater numbers. They knew the humans were outnumbered 10-1, but Hale's voice carried no hesitation. "We did not cross the void to abandon them. If they return, we will hold this world." No matter the cost, the officers saluted. They had expected nothing less, but in the corner of the command deck, one young lieutenant whispered, "Admiral, what if this is only the beginning? What if the galaxy itself turns against us?" Hale's eyes were cold as iron. "Then the galaxy will learn what it means when humanity stands down on the surface." The Zyrans struggled to accept their new reality. Human engineers set up water purifiers, food generators, and medical clinics. Children who had been starving now held warm meals in their hands. Families saw sick relatives rise from their beds after being treated with human medicine. Everywhere the same question echoed. Why are they doing this? One old Zyran priest stood in the streets. Staring at the human aid workers, his voice trembled as he spoke. Perhaps the stars have not abandoned us. Perhaps they sent these humans in our darkest hour. But not all were grateful. Some Zyran generals feared humanity. They whispered in the shadows, if they have such power, why would they stop at helping us? What if they choose to rule us? Fear and hope clashed in the hearts of the Zyran people, and the galaxy watched unseen from afar. The rival empire did not wait long. Their fleet returned, larger and more powerful. Dozens of battleships, hundreds of cruisers, their weapons glowing like suns. The sky darkened as their armada arrived. This time there would be no retreat. They had come to erase both the Zyrans and the humans who dared to interfere. The Zyrans screamed in terror, even with humanity's help. How could anyone stand against such force? But the humans did not falter on the flagship's command deck. Hale gave the order. Form the line, no ship passes us. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Zyrans had ever seen. Human ships moved with precision. They weaved through enemy fire, striking with weapons faster and sharper than the old empires had ever designed. Every missile found its mark. Every defense shield held longer than it should. But numbers mattered. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more pressed forward. The humans fought like lions, but the tide threatened to crush them. On the surface, the Zyrans watched the skies burn. Children clung to their parents. Citizens whispered prayers. They could see human ships fall, streaks of fire cutting across the heavens, and for the first time they feared not only for themselves, but for their saviors. Then, something happened that none expected. The Zyran civilians began to rise, not with weapons, but with courage. They ran to aid the human soldiers on the ground, carrying supplies, repairing machines, guiding them through cities for so long. The Zyrans had been helpless, but now, watching humans fight for them, something ignited within their broken hearts. They refused to simply stand by, back in orbit. The human fleet fought on the edge of defeat. Admiral Hale knew the truth. If the enemy broke through, the Zyrans would be erased. He stood silent for a long moment, then gave the order. Deploy the last measure. From the belly of the flagship, a colossal weapon emerged. Not a bomb, not a supergun, but something stranger. A device that bent gravity itself. The weapon roared, and space itself seemed to twist. Enemy ships were pulled into crushing fields of force, tearing their formations apart. The rival empire's armada broke in chaos. Their commanders, once arrogant, now screamed in fear. They had thought humans were backward, weak, insignificant. Now they saw something far worse. Unpredictable strength. The surviving enemy ships retreated once more, but this time, Their retreat carried fear that would spread across the galaxy. The Xeran stood on the surface looking up at the victorious fleet. Their saviors had held the line, but it was more than victory. It was a turning of fate. For now the galaxy knew humanity existed, and they were not to be ignored in the council chambers. The elders whispered in awe, "They saved us. When no one else would, they saved us." Another voice filled with wonder said, "If they would do this for us, what will they do when the galaxy itself turns against them?" The stars had changed that day, and the galaxy would never be the same again. A new bond forged in stars. The warships of the rival empire had fled. Their burning wrecks still orbited Xeran Prime like shattered ghosts. And yet the silence that followed was heavier than the battle itself. For everyone knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning on the surface. The people of Xeran Prime gathered in their ruined plazas. Their eyes followed the black human ships in the skies above. These strangers from Earth had stood between them and death. They had shielded a people the galaxy had already abandoned. And for the first time in living memory, the Xyrans felt something new. Not fear, not despair, but loyalty. Inside the human flagship, Admiral Marcus Hale listened as reports came in. Casualties heavy, ammunition nearly exhausted. Engines strained, his officers said, but none of that mattered. They had held. They had done the impossible, and in his chest, the Admiral felt a weight. The knowledge that Earth had crossed a line from which there was no return. In the Xeran High Council chamber, the elders debated with trembling voices. Some feared the humans, whispering, "If they have such power, could they not conquer us as easily as they saved us?" But others shook their heads. They came with medicine. Not chains, with food, not demands. They fought when no one else would if they wished to rule. We would already be bowing. At last, the oldest counselor, his voice rough with age, stood and declared, "The galaxy turned its back on us, but Earth did not. From this day, the Xeran people will never forget. We are bound to them not by force, but by honor." News of the battle spread faster than light through the galaxy. Whispers grew in the courts of rival empires. Some spoke in disbelief. Humans? Those primitives? Others spoke in fear. If they could defeat such a fleet, what else are they hiding? And some in dark corners began to plot, humanity must be watched, or destroyed before it is too late. Back on Xeran Prime, something remarkable was happening. For centuries, the Xerans had lived in pride and isolation. Now, they worked side by side with the strange newcomers. Human engineers taught them how to repair broken systems. Human medics treated their sick, not asking for payment. Children followed the armored soldiers in the streets, laughing for the first time in years. And slowly the people began to believe again. But deep inside every Xeran heart was the same question. Why? Why would humanity risk itself for us? The answer came not from an admiral, not from a diplomat, but from a young human medic. She knelt beside a starving child. Handing him food when asked why, she simply smiled and said, "Because someone had to." Those words spread through the city like fire. The aliens had expected cruelty, expected greed. Instead, they found something stronger. Compassion backed by steel. Mercy carried on the wings of power. That night, the Xeran skies lit again, not with war, but with celebration. Fires burned, songs rose, and for the first time the people felt safe. Above them, the human fleet held position, silent guardians watching from the stars. And in every heart one truth was carved forever. Humanity had answered when no one else dared. Yet far beyond, in hidden star systems, enemies gathered. The rival empires' shame turned to hatred. Other empires whispered, "If the humans will fight for strangers, what will they do when their own are threatened? What if one day they choose to lead instead of follow?" Fear grew in every corner of the galaxy. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Hale looked out at the stars. He knew what was coming. The battle for Xeran Prime was only the first spark. The galaxy would not forgive humanity for shattering its silence. And yet, in his eyes, there was no fear, only resolve. He spoke softly, almost to himself. They begged for salvation. And we came. Now the galaxy knows. Humanity does not turn away. Let them fear us, let them hate us. We will answer every cry in the dark, and we will not stop. The human fleet turned its engines toward the endless black. Beside them, for the first time in history, Xeran warships joined formation. The two fleets moved together, a symbol of a bond that no empire could break. One broken people and one rising world, standing side by side, ready for whatever came next. The stars were no longer silent. They echoed now with a new truth when all others abandoned hope. When empires turned their backs, there was one species that would come. One species that would fight for strangers. One species the galaxy would never again underestimate: humanity.